All right, folks. As you see the picture here on the screen is a woman by the name of Hannah Pearl Davis, otherwise known as Pearly Thingz. She's a pretty well-known YouTuber. I think she's probably considered to be a red pill female YouTuber content creator. Female red pill of sorts. She has about approximately 2 million subscribers. And she has a lot of conservative views for the most part, particularly with women, as far as she's an anti-feminist of sorts. But what I wanted to discuss in regards to her is that I used to follow her for quite a while when she first came up. And first time I remember, the first appearance I saw her on was on Donovan Sharp's podcast. And Donovan Sharp has actually helped elevate quite a few pretty popular YouTubers right now. Myron from Fresh and Fit would be one of them, and a few others. But in particular, we're talking about Pearly Thingz here. She had a tweet on Twitter where she was talking about how she had a particular YouTuber, which she didn't mention by name, I guess, who she said met her team and everything like that, but he's been doing a whole bunch of videos saying that she was racist, even after, I guess, having an interview with him and everything like that. I can only imagine who it is, and this must be a black YouTuber, black male YouTuber of sorts. Well, I wanted to say that I think that Pearl has fell out of favor with a lot of the black male YouTubers who actually helped elevate her profile in the very beginning. And personally, I could probably see why. No, I actually can see why, because Pearl has gone very far to the right, and even some of the people she's had on her show. One, of course, in particular is Nick Fuentes. And another one she had, which isn't per se maybe as extreme as Nick Fuentes, would be Paul Elam, which was a men's rights advocate MGTOW of sorts, which I followed him for a long time, but I got some issues with him, and I'll get into that in a minute. I think Pearl has really, she's kind of, in my opinion, done the same thing that a lot of white celebrities or people have done, which is that they will appropriate things that they have adopted from black culture, and then once they get what they want, then they basically seem to be where they'll just turn their back on those same people. I'm not saying she turned her back on all of them, but I will say she was on Obsidian's podcast, Mumia Obsidian Ali's podcast. He interviewed her. Coach Greg Adams had her on his show one time. She was on Lead Attorney's podcast before. Kevin Samuels. She actually admitted that Kevin Samuels actually gave her a course on YouTube that helped her get, to become a better, to improve her production quality or understanding of the algorithm of YouTube. So Pearly Thingz has gotten a lot of support from black male YouTubers as a whole. Okay. So, it seems to be that she's moved away from a lot of those particular, that space in a lot of ways, right? And now, I'm kind of reluctant to call her racist, but I will say that I have started to smell some things about her ideology which she's been very subtle about, but I think that people have been paying attention to her. And to be honest with you, I think the fact that a lot of these other black male YouTubers who supported her and promoted her in the beginning are pretty much silent, dead silent now. And I can understand why, because personally, I've pretty much, I'm not so favorable about towards Pearl anymore. Another person, look, people have caught slings and arrows for supporting her. Black YouTubers, one in particular, Angry Man, supported her for something that she said, and he took a bunch of arrows for it. Not that he ain't big enough to take them, because he's a big enough man to take them. But the point is, he got criticism for it. There's a lot of YouTubers that said, oh, you guys are supporting Pearly Thingz, this white girl, blah blah, right? And I mean, look, she was even Anton Daniels. Speaking of which, she was on his show. But it seems to me that Pearly Thingz is, she's kind of, I don't want to say she forgot where she came from, but I will say that I think that she is not maybe everything that she represented herself to be. First of all, she comes from privilege. She even said that her father's in the top 1%, which she looks up highly, and there's nothing wrong with that since it's her father. But I will say that maybe some of her views probably adopted from her upbringing, let's just be honest, like most people. And, I think as far as the race issue is concerned, she hasn't really shown herself to be. Now, I know that she's dated a black man, or she typically dates black men, but what I'm going to say is just because somebody dates someone black or willing to date black people does not mean they don't have racist views. Ask a former slave master. All right? And I think that Pearl needs to get honest with herself, maybe about the fact that, or at least if you feel a certain way, just come out and say it, But at the end of the day, I think that Pearl may be more of a fan of black men than she is as far as black culture. Let's just say it that way. And some of the people who she props up are not got a lot of slick stuff to say about black people. So then they say that if you're holding 9 broke friends, you're bound to be the 10th one. They say tell me who your friends are. I'll tell you who you are. And I know that sometimes guilty by association isn't always fair, but some of the people who are fellow YouTubers, they got a lot of slick stuff to say about black people and black culture, and they're actually quite ignorant about it. I mean, we're talking about people who, like Sneeko, for example, who wasn't even alive when rap music came out, okay, talking about how rap culture. See, the only thing he knows about rap culture is what's been promoted by a lot of these corporations now. But I'm quite sure. Look, I'm a Gen Xer, so I got to say that I definitely know a little more about rap and how rap started hip hop than Sneeko will. I forgot more than he probably knows. So the reality is, I think it's kind of funny for a young boy like that to sit there and say, or a young man, excuse me, to have all this, pretend he has all this wisdom that he don't have. But I digress. The fact of the matter is, I think Pearl is starting to show some of her true colors as far as how she feels about black culture, and it's not looking very good. It really isn't. And even some of the, then she's another one who will talk about Thomas Sowell. But like I said, Thomas Sowell is kind of like been used as an apologist for white supremacy in a lot of ways by a lot of the people in the sector. He has, let's just be honest. Not to say that some things he doesn't say are true. There's something the things that Hitler said is true. Doesn't mean that in substance we want to go along with all of it, Because it's funny to me about how he's the only black intellectual that seems to get any respect in the white sector in a general sense, especially on the right. So I don't think that's just coincidental. Let's just say that, all right? Because there's a lot of other ones. I mean, for one, we don't talk about it. I mean, he's supposed to be an economist, but rarely is anybody talking about the economy. They like talking about culture, and especially when it comes to black people. Funny thing about it is they rarely talk to them about actual economics and how the economic aspects may affect certain cultures. Now, I mean, you never hear anybody like Dr. Claude Anderson. His name is almost never mentioned, So I don't think it's just coincidental that Thomas Sowell seemed to be the poster child for the right when it comes to talking points they want to spit from a black person. I don't think it's just coincidental by any stretch of imagination. But I think Pearl needs to actually take an honest look in the mirror as to why she's losing some of her popularity amongst black people in this sector. More particularly, even black men, worst of all. I think some of her takes, she needs to do a little more research, and she needs to look at some other sides of the argument, and it's not helping her. It really isn't. You know, So there's a reason why that she's falling out of favor. There really is. I mean, when you make a statement, for example, I wish I could find the tweet. Maybe one day I will, where she went as far as to say that why are white men being attacked? Because white men are the founders of society. And then you have somebody like Paul Elam again, who made a statement, which I had a little back and forth with him about. That was, the idea is that white men are just being attacked and blah blah. But Paul Elam, in my view, has some very racially charged views. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of these anti-feminists, and I'll even go as far as say even Karen Strawn, which I think she's got a lot of good takes, but I've watched videos with her talking specifically to white men. So a lot of times, even though these people make good points, a lot of our points come from one racial aspect, which is their side of the aspect. So you got to keep that understanding. Then that's what you can't say. You got to wonder why. So don't wonder why there's MGTOW, and then there's the Black Manosphere, and then there's Black Red Pill. There's a reason, because culturally, there are certain things that are not being addressed in regards to the Black community when they're talking about MGTOW-ish or red pill stuff. They're not being addressed. That's just the reality. And the unique position that black men happen to be in as far as their community. But again, Pearl is she's just not. I'm not feeling a lot of things that she's saying anymore. I'm really not, and I think that's happening to a lot of people, because it's kind of like now you've had all this support from these black male YouTubers. Now it's all of a sudden like those people don't exist anymore. Well, there's a reason for that, okay? Because you don't see anybody sticking up for her anymore. You notice that, right? So sometimes what people don't say says more than what they do say, okay? And I think Pearl needs to get honest with herself about some of her views and understand that she can have whatever views she wants. But at the same time, doesn't mean that people don't have a right to criticize you, because the same way you can espouse those views, the same way people can respond. But she's very careful, in my opinion, not to say certain things. But people are not fooled. People are not being fooled. I mean, really, she is kind of making it hard for some of those ones that defended her to defend her anymore, in my opinion. Pay attention to some of the stuff that she says. I mean, I'll tell you something. Nick Fuentes, in particular, even though, hey, I have no problem with social conservatism. People want to be social conservative or cultural conservative, fine. But clearly when Nick Fuentes goes as far to say that, we want to preserve white culture, or that we want United America to be a white nation, that is the definition of white nationalist. And the fact of the matter is, that's a sense of entitlement that says that even though for one, in my opinion, the United States will never be a white nation, because this country, this part of the world was not a particularly white nation from the beginning. This was colonization, which tells you a lot about the mindset of somebody like Nick Fuentes. And then you have people wearing KKK hoods who are technically not foundational black Americans, basically trying to make a mockery out of our history and what we've been through, and insulting us. And I'm sorry, I can't agree with any YouTuber, no matter who it is, that will go along with that type of insult. I'm sorry, can't go along with that. And I think that a person who is a foundational black American really should be ashamed of themselves. Because yes, I have plenty of critiques about the black community. But some of these people barely understand the history of this country. So, it's kind of, insulting and disrespectful for them to say some things they're saying. And these are some of the people that Pearl rides with. And people are seeing it. They're seeing it. They're seeing it. Now, I know that Pearl catches a lot of flack from a lot of these feminist type women about things that she says about women shouldn't vote and things like that. But, that's to be expected when you're an anti-feminist. But I think that as far as the racial angle of things, she's not everything that she's portraying herself to be. I mean, she can go and say she's not racist, but I think she really needs to look at her views, look at some of the source information that she goes along with, and maybe she needs to do her research or whatever the case may be. But she has to understand that people are not just saying this just because they, want to frame her as the white girl. She's the victim, like some of her other supporters might be thinking. The reality is, some of the things that she's saying or supporting doesn't say much for her. First of all, she has very, I would say personally, a little bit of an ignorant take on slavery because, say what you want to say about what went across the world and all everything else. Doesn't make it right. Number two, in this particular country, and as far as the slavery in this country, she fails to realize the uniqueness of slavery in America in regards to comparison to maybe the Slavic nations where some of those families are still intact, where you have chattel, where we were not even considered human in this country, which is very different than a lot of forms of slavery throughout the world. But the fact of the matter is, Pearl is definitely making herself appear to be a grifter of Black Red Pill. She really has. And she needs to actually take a look at that and understand that she's losing a lot of that support, partially for that reason. Now I know a lot of people don't give a damn about, what Black people think in a dominant society. But at the end of the day, we gotta care. And when you sit there and you support these people, and then they thumb their nose or spit in your hand, you gotta call it out. And people are calling it out. It may be being swept on the rug, but guess what? She's gonna have to deal with it one way or another. Because people are not just making this up. She is definitely not an expert on a lot of these things. First of all, she's not a man. She's certainly not a Black man. So I think she needs to start paying some homage to the people that helped to elevate her. Because it seems like she's gotten too far away from that. And, she's moved to the right, dealing with the Daily Wire and stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, Pearl, they got some explaining to do. And if you don't, then guess what? It's going to be what it's going to be. Sorry, but that's just the way it's looking. And if you don't care, then you know what? You might as well just, say what's on your mind and suffer the consequences.